Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome. My name is Donald Christian. I have the privilege of serving as president here at SUNY New Paltz, and I'm pleased to welcome everyone here today, and thank you for joining us. In addition to our primary educational mission as a public university, we're committed to serving communities in the region by using our convening capacity like this to bring people and organizations together to share information and discuss important ideas that benefit communities and the region. Today's event is a prime example of that commitment. A special welcome to Governor Cuomo. It's a pleasure to have you here again just a few months after you launched the Startup New York initiative here on campus, and we look forward very much to joining that effort as well. I want to acknowledge some of the guests who are with us today, and I would ask that you hold your applause until I've completed this entire list. First, John Bonacic, New York State Senator, to my right. Michael Hein.
I love to violate the rules.
Michael Hein, Ulster County Executive. Jamie Rubin, New York Rising Director. Steve Kelly, New York Rising Co-Chair. Julia Robbins, New York Rising Co-Chair. Elliot Auerbach, Ulster County Controller. Susan Zimmett, Supervisor, Town of New Paltz. Bernd Leifeld, Supervisor, Town of Olive. Kelly Myers, Supervisor, Town of Saugerties. Gene Walsh, Supervisor, Town of Rosendale. Jeremy Wilbur, Supervisor, Town of Woodstock. Jeffrey Kaplan, Mayor, Village of Ellenville. Jonathan Drapkin, President and CEO, Hudson Valley Pattern for Progress and Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council member. Jim Taylor, President Taylor Biomass and Mid-Hudson Regional Economic Development Council member. Rebecca Rotzler, Acting Mayor, Village of New Paltz. Ward Todd, President and CEO of the Ulster Chamber of Commerce. And Michael Smith, President of New Paltz Regional Chamber of Commerce. Let's give all of these folks a round of applause. I also want to acknowledge here today the presence of faculty and students who are part of a project being undertaken by our Center for Research, Regional Education, and Outreach that relates to the topic of today's event. This is a project on planning and implementing green infrastructure to improve watershed resiliency right here in the village of New Paltz. This project seeks to address climate change, reduce flooding, improve water quality, and restore watersheds, all in accord with the power of SUNY Energy Smart goals. Collaborative partners on this project include Cornell University's Water Resources Institute, the New York State Department of Environmental Conservation Hudson River Estuary Program, SUNY New Paltz, and the Village of New Paltz. In the last several years, our communities were affected by not one, but several storms. When Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee swept through the Mid-Hudson region, they caused incredible damage, and even our campus here was flooded. On Sunday morning, August 28, 2011, while Irene was pelting us with rain, I walked through the floodwater flowing like a trout stream through the ground floor of this building and our adjacent administration building. At that moment, I thought we would be out of operation for weeks. We were able to recover our base operations in a few days, even though it took us months to return to what we would call full normal, and at a cost of well over $1 million. We feel blessed here on the campus that all of our students, faculty, and staff stayed safe, and that our property damage was slight, in contrast to other communities in the region. The damage in Ulster County was truly unprecedented, and while we've made much progress, there's more to do. That's why we're here today, to discuss the work that remains to be done after these terrible storms. Thanks to the governor and his team in working together under the New York Rising Community Reconstruction Program, we're continuing to move forward to a full recovery. Today we're here to take the next step and begin putting a rebuilding plan into action, identify our assets and opportunities, assess our risks and needs, and develop a plan that serves our community and is supported by the state. When the program is over, Ulster County will be more resilient and stronger than before the storm. Thank you all, and now it's my pleasure to welcome Ulster County Executive Mike Hein Michael Hein has provided exemplary leadership and a deep sense of caring and responsibility for helping Ulster County communities devastated so severely by the series of hurricanes and other storms these past several years.
Thank you very much. I was just reveling in the moment of being called exemplary. That doesn't happen very often in life. I remember Hurricane Irene and Tropical Storm Lee and even Superstorm Sandy like it was yesterday. I remember watching houses torn from their foundations, flowing downstream. I watched families on top of roofs trying to take shelter from the storm. I watched the worst natural disaster in the history of Ulster County, and then 11 days later, it happened all over again. And then with Superstorm Sandy, we saw record-setting 9.5-foot floodwaters rise in the Hudson and do damage across the board. So we understand firsthand what it's like, and every step of the way, the governor's administration has been there for us. So whether it was immediately when, and I will tell you, Art Snyder is the emergency management coordinator for the entire county. He has been doing this for 30 years. He said to me, and I quote, "In my entire career, I have never seen such a fast response. I have never seen the high level of individuals from the state here, right now, when we need them, knocking down bureaucratic hurdles and making sure people got cared for." That is a debt of gratitude we have for Governor Cuomo. And so now, when the sun is shining and it's beautiful, like it is every day in Ulster County except for during hurricanes, we are focused on a new plan. Governor Cuomo didn't just bring forward any plan. He brought forward the kind of plan that allows for local participation, the kind of plan that can be successful because it's not from the top down, it's from the bottom up. And because of that, again, he's getting it right. We're talking about New York Rising. We're talking about dedicating dollars to ensuring our community not just returns to the way it was, but in the end, it's better than it's ever been. And so because of that, we continue to owe a debt of gratitude, but mostly I feel very blessed to have a governor like Governor Cuomo. Thank you.
Thank you, County Executive Hein. It's now my pleasure to introduce our state senator, John Bonacic. Senator Bonacic is a great supporter of communities in the Hudson Valley and certainly of SUNY New Paltz. Senator?
Thank you, Don. First of all, good afternoon to everyone. I want to tell you how my day started and why I'm here. We had a judiciary legislative meeting in Goshen, a public hearing, that started at 11. It was over around 2. I got back to my Albany office, and they said, Governor Cuomo is coming to the University of New Paltz, and he would like you to go. I get in the car, and I rush down here. I stop in McDonald's and have oatmeal for my lunch. And here I am, and I said, what is this stuff? They said, this is what the governor's press people prepared that they would like you to say. I'm going to put that over there. Because when it comes to flood control, I've been living with this problem and pain for 10 years. I cannot tell you the devastation that I've witnessed over and over and over again, beginning in 2004, throughout the Catskills, Ulster County, and Delaware County. In 2006 alone, this state incurred over $500 million of property damage, not talking about loss of life. And I have gone to those funerals and paid my respect to the people who've lost their lives in these horrendous hurricanes and storms. So what I've come to the conclusion is that these kinds of hurricanes are here to stay. Irene, Lee, they were devastating to everyone. But I don't think they're going to go away. And Sandy, we know what happened there. A little different than Irene and Lee. And it amazes me to this day, the spirit of the people. Their homes have been devastated. Their businesses have been lost. They get up from the ashes and they rebuild. And they open their business again and build there. I have to give this governor credit because he said, we cannot keep doing the same thing. We have to learn. And I respect all of our friends and neighbors and constituents for the challenges they faced that got off the canvas and moved in a direction to keep living their life. But we have to rebuild smarter. We have to build stronger. And I do believe this governor recognizes that. He's come up with this program to help with flood control. I applaud this governor not only on this issue, but what he's trying to do in economic development and creating jobs throughout the state of New York. So we're very pleased he's focused on this. We're very pleased to work with him. And we all realize, and this governor realizes, that the flood control problem is not going to be solved coming from Albany. It's going to be solved with boots on the ground, with people who have lived through these floods. They know what kind of things, corrective action that has to be done to try to minimize loss of property and loss of life. So it gives me great pleasure to introduce our governor, Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. First, let me thank President Christian for opening up SUNY New Paltz once again. It's a beautiful facility, and let's also give him a round of applause for his great leadership in building this institution. To County Executive Mike Hein, you are truly lucky to have one of the greatest local officials in the state of New York right here. Mike was talking about the storms and what we went through and the state's response. One of the interesting things about the storms is you can really tell about people when the pressure is on. The good and the bad comes out in people, and you can really see what they're made of. And you can see who rises to the occasion. When things were at their worst, Mike Hein was at his best. And you want to talk about a leader who stepped forward and provided comfort and leadership and made the tough decisions. That was Mike Hein. And if it wasn't for his leadership, the damage would have been much worse in Ulster County. And that's the truth. And let's give him a round of applause. We have Jamie Rubin, who is with us on the panel today. He's actually running the New York Rising program, and he's one of the great young talents. And it's a pleasure to be with him, and Steve Kelly and Julia Robbins, who are going to provide the local leadership. I want to thank them for their time. And this isn't going to be an easy process, but they're stepping forward, talking about leadership. And to Senator Bonacic. Let me say this about my friend, because he is my friend. The Senator and I have worked together for the past couple of 3 years in Albany. And it has been a different couple of 3 years in Albany than the past period in Albany. I don't know if you remember what Albany was like. You know, you see the gridlock we see in Washington. That was Albany on a good day, that kind of gridlock. And the state government didn't work, and it didn't work for a long time. You had that annual charade when they would go to do the state budget every year. Budget's supposed to be done by April 1. They would start to talk on the news before the April 1 deadline. Maybe the state's going to have a budget on time this year. And everybody would talk happy talk. We're trying, we're working. And then the deadline would always come and go, and the budget would be late. And you just looked at the state government and you said, you know, I can't believe the government is that dysfunctional. We started a couple of years ago and we said we're going to try a different track. And we're going to put the politics aside. Because at the end of the day, it's simple. We're Democrats, we're Republicans, but we're New Yorkers first. And let's act like New Yorkers and leave the politics at the door. And that's what we've done. We don't always agree, but we remember why we're there. And we're there to move the ball forward, and we're there to work it out, and we're there to compromise. And what gridlock winds up being, gridlock is when elected officials would rather play their party politics than do the people's business, and would rather hear their own speeches than figure out how to get to yes and move the ball forward. I applaud the senator and I applaud his conference for really providing leadership and moving this state forward. 3 budgets balanced on time. We're passing laws. The government is working, and it makes a difference. So let's give a round of applause to Senator Bonacic.
Thank you, Governor. Pleasure.
It basically has all been said. We just have to get to work. Irene and Lee were devastating. It was breathtaking. And Mike is exactly right. It's like yesterday, the images. And the power of Mother Nature and how it can rise up from nowhere. It could be a totally fine day one day, and the next day all hell breaks loose. And you had a little stream, a little creek in the backyard, and it becomes a raging monster. And then the damage that water can do. You know, when the pictures don't do it justice. You see a picture of a flood, the next day the water's gone. It looks basically okay. Now, the water brings a toxic mix, mold, it brings a filth, it brings a mud, a dirt that is devastating to the communities that it hits. And it was out of nowhere. If you remember back, it was supposed to hit New York City. And all the attention was on New York City. And Irene and Lee missed New York City, and everybody said, oh, boy, that's great. We dodged the bullet. We didn't dodge a bullet. It just hit another part of the body. And it missed New York City, but it was devastating through the Hudson Valley, through the North Country. And then two successive storms. So it was frightening, and it was devastating, no doubt. As Senator Bonacic said, the question is now, we have an option. We can either say, well, those storms were once in a million, once in 100 years, and it's never going to happen again. It was a freak occurrence, so don't worry about it, because it's just not going to happen again. That's option A. Option B is, we hope it doesn't happen again, but we think it might. I am in the school of option B. I've been governor for less than 3 years. We've had 5 storms in 3 years, and every time they told me, oh, don't worry, this is a once-in-a-100-year storm. We have once-in-a-100-year storms every year now. There is a different pattern to the weather that is undeniable. The oceans are warming, there's a different weather pattern, and this frequency of extreme weather is here. And it's here to stay, unfortunately. So we hope for the best, but we prepare for the worst. And then you'd say, well, let's rebuild from this, let's learn from this, so if, God forbid, it happens again, we don't sustain the same damage, and we're in a better position to deal with it. And we're in a better position to prevent damage in the first place. We had one lucky, smart but lucky, Hurricane Sandy happened after Irene and Lee, obviously. And Hurricane Sandy hit downstate New York, hit Long Island, parts of the Hudson Valley, Staten Island. It was so devastating that the federal government, the Congress, was passing what's called the supplemental appropriation. They were going to send more money to the state to deal with it. When we were fighting Washington for the money for Hurricane Sandy, we were smart enough to include in the legislation funding for Irene and Lee also. And the Congress passed that law. So we actually received $30 billion in the Hurricane Sandy appropriation, but we are also able to reimburse for communities that were hit by Irene and Lee. So now we have the opportunity to come back and say to you today, we have funding available from Hurricane Sandy, ironically, but we have funding available that you can use to initiate and implement the lessons that we learned from Irene and Lee. That's the essence of today. Well, how do we do that? Well, we could sit here, a panel of distinguished government officials, and say, let us tell you what we think you should do. That's what they call top-down. That's what the county executive was referring to. The other way is to say, well, you know what? Maybe government doesn't have all the answers, and maybe government doesn't know, and maybe every community is a little bit different. Ulster's a little bit different than Delaware, a little bit different than Columbia. Every community is a little different. And really, the best way to do it is to say to the community, you tell us how to do it. Because government doesn't always know best. Government may think it knows best, but government doesn't always know best. Can I tell my government doesn't always know best story?
Please do.
I go to work in Washington, D.C. during the Clinton administration. I go to as Secretary of Housing and Urban Development, Cabinet Department, HUD it was called. And one of my first missions is I go to Alaska and to visit Native American reservations in Alaska, because HUD also provides housing on Native American reservations. HUD does the housing, the economic development. So I'm in Alaska and I visit the Tlingit Haida Indian tribe. And I'm very excited. I'm at HUD, federal official. I'm in Alaska. Now, it's fair to say I don't have a lot of knowledge about Native Americans at that time. I grew up in Queens. We did not have a lot of Native American tribes in Queens. So I'm a little bit out of my element, and I'm a little nervous about saying the right thing and doing the right thing, because the Native Americans, the chief meets me in full tribal garb, and they have a very refined culture. And we go into the first house, and we're taking a tour, and we go to the kitchen, first kitchen, and the kitchen sink is being used for storage. It's like a lot of stuff in the kitchen sink, clearly not using the kitchen sink. I look at it, I don't say anything. We walk further into the house, and we pass the bathroom. I look into the bathroom, and they're using the bathroom as a closet. They put up poles, and they're hanging clothes. I don't say anything. I think maybe I'm going to make some faux pas and some culturally disrespectful. We go into the second house. Second house, kitchen sink is gone. Go to the bathroom. The facilities are taken out of the bathroom. No sink, no toilet. So I said to the chief, you know, Chief, it doesn't seem like they are using the kitchen sink and the bathroom that much. Safe statement. Chief said, no, we don't use it that much. I said, well, I find that interesting. Safe statement. Interesting is a beautiful word. You really can't get into trouble when you say interesting. I said, that's interesting. He says, well, we put in the kitchen and we put in the bathroom because the HUD regulations say that when you build a house, you have to have a kitchen and you have to have a bathroom and they have to be fully plumbed. It's your regulation, Mr. Secretary. I said, yeah, no, I understand, but that's a good regulation. He said, no, it's a very good regulation. But we have no running water here on the reservation. You know, when you're writing the regulations, government's writing the regulations, it sounds like it makes sense. You should have a kitchen and a bathroom. Yeah, but not for a community that doesn't have running water. So, what did we learn from Irene and Lee? Senator Bonacic says this has happened many, many times. What is the best thing we can do to fix it? Here, in your situation. What stream maintenance should we do? What culverts have to be repaired? What houses should be bought out? What infrastructure needs to be done? It's all a little different in the community, and we want to know from you, what do you need, and we'll respond to your request. Every storm has a silver lining. Silver lining here is twofold, I believe. Number one, we talked about the best and the worst in people. You saw first responders in this community who were magnificent. You saw neighbors helping neighbors that were inspirational. I saw neighbors come out and help other people dig mud out of their basement who were in the same situation in their home, but they wanted to be there to help their neighbors. I saw volunteers come up from all across the state to your community on Labor Day, and it was a beautiful thing to see. We're New Yorkers, we're tough. We're also a loving, caring, community-oriented people. That was part of the silver lining. Part of the silver lining is this. We happen to have funding available, 10 communities, $30 million available. $30 million is a lot of money. Senator can tell you, we have a very tight pocket in Albany. We've been very careful with the taxpayer dollar. You don't see a lot of $30 billion checks around. You really don't see $30 million. $30 million available to 10 communities if you come up with a plan that makes sense on how to help. That's the silver lining. And what's the goal? The goal is to build back better than before. Not to replace what was, but to replace it smarter, leaner, more efficient, more effective, better than before. Yeah, we got knocked on our rear end. Question is, do you get up? And do you get up smarter for it and learn the lesson from it? And this is all about doing exactly that. We went through a tough period. We came together, we helped one another, we had the courage to stand up, and we had the brains to learn from it and to make the community stronger and better. That's what this meeting is all about. That's what the exercise is all about, and I'm pleased and proud to be part of it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you, Governor. Now I'd like to introduce our two co-chairs and ask each of them to say a few words. First, please welcome Julia Robbins. Julia is chair of the New Paltz Downtown Business Association. She's a SUNY New Paltz alumna and works as a holistic business coach. Julie?
Yes, thank you. Thank you. And I just want to thank you, President Christian, for hosting us today, this event and the meeting afterwards. Thank you. I'm just really happy to be here. I see a lot of friends and people I've already worked with on so many projects in this community. So honored to serve as co-chair with Mr. Kelly. And I'm just really excited to participate in this restructuring program. It's an amazing opportunity for our community. The genius of the program is that, as you know, they've so eloquently stated, it's locally oriented. You know, understanding that it is the people who live and work in our community that know what we need to do and what it's going to take to build a better community. And so when Mother Nature throws something at us again, we'll be ready. Also, if we do this right, you know, we're redesigning the area for our future generations, you know, not just for 10 years from now or when the next storm hits, but decades for our grandchildren. And I really appreciate the support that Governor Cuomo has already given us, has given this community and the state. And I'm really looking forward to working on this project. And thank you very much. I'm very honored to be doing this.
Thank you, Julia. Our next speaker is Stephen Kelly, who's CEO of Ellenville Regional Hospital. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It is certainly a pleasure to be here. It's hard to imagine that we're talking about storms on a day that is so pristine as today, where there's not a cloud in the sky, and it's just about the ideal temperature, and I Fall is my favorite time of year. I'm looking forward to working with all of you because days like this are followed by days that are disastrous, as have been, I think, very clearly illustrated by our previous speakers. I think that if we work together with the governor's very generous vision of being able to have our community rise together, that we'll be able to rebuild and to prepare ourselves for future disasters. And I certainly agree with the governor that these kind of disasters are becoming annual events, and they seem to be getting worse. While we didn't feel quite as bad as Sandy, I think as a storm, it was a larger storm. So the best way to use this vision of the governor of having communities come together is to have us utilize our knowledge and experience and to come up with projects that are going to be meaningful for our communities. And that's pulling together through these councils that are starting today. These councils will have voices from every part of our community, from business to labor. Together across all sectors, we are developing and implementing strategies from the ground up that will shape our community for years to come. By coming together as one, we are truly a community that is on the rise. So without further delay, let's get down to the business of building a stronger, smarter Ulster County. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Thank you, everyone, for joining us at SUNY New Paltz today, and thank you, Governor Cuomo, for your leadership. That concludes our program. Thank you all.